Hi, I'm Rob Lockenauer. I'm a partner at Banyan. I've been working with family owners for 15 years now, facilitating meetings, and it's not always easy. We help our clients make great decisions together in these meetings and elsewhere. I've learned a ton about how to facilitate groups to make decisions together, and I want to share some of that with you. Um, One thing that's going on with families in these family owner meetings is there are always two levels. There's a rational level and there's an emotional level, and they get intertwined a whole lot. I'm going to share over the next series of videos ways that we have found to help groups make great decisions. Here, I want to talk to you about a facilitation tool we call the candor-o-meter. The worst thing in meetings is typically not a whole lot of conflict. It's fake harmony. You're in a meeting and nobody's saying anything that they really believe. It's all these nods, yes, yes, and no real conversations happening. So as a facilitator, what do you do about it? We came up with a very simple idea, and we call it the candor-o-meter. And the candor-o-meter runs from 1, very low candor, no one's saying anything that they really believe, to 5, they're really putting it out on the table in a respectful way, and 3 is in the middle. If you're in the middle of a meeting, running a meeting, and no one's saying anything that you think is the real issue, you just say, time out, we're going to do a quick candor-o-meter here. And you go around the room and you ask each person to give a number, 1, 3, 5, about how candid they think this conversation is being, either for themselves or in general. And you write these down on a flip chart. And then what always has happened with me is the people who give a low rating, say a 1 or a 2, immediately want to say, here's what we should be talking about. And the whole conversation seems to open up in a very healthy way. So I suggest you think about using a candor-o-meter when this meeting is being stuck in fake harmony. Another facilitation tool I found super useful, especially in meetings where 1 or 2 parties are dominating airtime. We call it the 1-minute rule. And what it means is we give permission to other people for about a minute. Studies show actually 47 seconds, but say it's a minute where you'll actually listen to someone. If they're going on longer than that, you've gone on. You've gone on thinking, what am I going to have for dinner? Or what's going on with my kid at school? These kind of things. So before meetings start, we ask everyone for permission to say, hey, is it okay for everyone to try to get their points out in 1 minute or less? If they're going beyond that, as a facilitator, I'll stand up at the 1.5-minute mark, and I will walk over at the 2-minute mark, and 2.5 minutes, I'll put my hand on their back. What's so good about this is people have a tendency to self-police. Rarely do I have to get up and do all of this. They're just like, oh, I think I've gone beyond my time. Okay, that's enough. So 1-minute rule is a way to keep the conversation going. Another facilitation tool that's actually one of my favorites right now, we call it rabbit hole. How many times have you been in a meeting where here's the topic and it has tangential points to it, and people go deep down in a rabbit hole? So what we do when we're starting these meetings is we say, okay, if anyone's going down in a rabbit hole, anyone in the meeting has the permission to do something that's kind of playful, which is this. And I'll never forget, I was on a Zoom call with one of the best trust and estate lawyers in the United States. Brilliant man. He loves his material, and he went down a deep rabbit hole. And on the Zoom call, I did this. And he looked, and he said, oh, I get it. I'm in a rabbit hole. And he came right out of it. So it's what you're trying to do is get permission to get people self-aware that they're not exactly where they should be at the time. So think about using the rabbit hole. So every group seems to have topics that they get stuck on. They probably have no influence on this thing, otherwise they'd solve it. It's just a topic that bugs them. And people will go again and again on a loop on these things. You know it's coming, and you know you can't help yourself. So an example, we have a group of 4 G2 siblings, and they're working on a shareholder agreement. Very important thing for them to reconcile. All they want to talk about, it seems, is their dad's bad behavior. They can't do anything about it. Dad passed away 5 years ago, but that's where they keep going back. So what we learned is if we can give them a physical way of getting out of the loop, it will get them back on track. So I typically like to use an object, my favorite, a minion. And what we do is we put the minion in the middle of the table, and we say is if anybody's looping on the topics we talked about, they will have to hold the item. They can talk about that looping thing as long as they want to, but what you find is if you're holding a minion, it's really hard to keep talking about dad's bad behavior when you know you're not supposed to be doing it. So we suggest if there are these infinite loops going on in your groups, identify them, write them down, have an object, have people hold that object, and you'll find you're out of the loop and back onto more important topics again. It's a fun, easy way to stay on topic. One of the most important ones that I use in almost every meeting is the idea of staying eye to eye with other people in the room. You know, in family businesses, you typically have parents, grandparents with children in the room, and it's natural to go into the parent mode. That's not what we're doing in decision-making with family owners. We're trying to treat everybody with respect and really get their voices out on the table. So we talk about the idea that in each of us, there are 3 different selves. There's the child, there's the adult, and then there's the parent. And it's okay for children to play with each other. You know, you go out and play soccer or something. It's okay for parents to talk about parental things together. But in a meeting, if someone is taking a parental role and looking down on the others and putting them in a child role, that's not okay. So we talk a lot about staying adult to adult or eye to eye in these meetings. What's great about this language is it's very physical. As soon as you see someone looking down, raising their voice, lowering the octave, these kind of things say, you're going in the parent role, and you need to call people out on that. I want to share one more helpful facilitation tool. We call it just decision criteria. So oftentimes groups get together to talk about decisions, but they haven't decided how they're going to decide. So we always try to step back before then and say, well, how are you going to make this decision? Is it going to be a majority? Is it going to be a supermajority? Do you want to just get to some sort of consensus? We've used all of these. I tell you, though, that there's one that I have found quite useful, and it's this. We say, we're going to ask you sometimes during the conversation about the decision we're making, do you love it? Do you like it? Or you can't live with it? And if you can't live with it, what is your recommendation to counter it and to make it better? And what we do is we don't wait till the end where, okay, every avenue has been gone through. We actually go through this decision criteria intermittently during the conversation to get a temperature check where people are. We'll learn a ton about, we actually all agree on this. Why are we still talking about this? Or, gosh, we're nowhere close on this. Everyone's saying, I can't live with this for very different reasons. And that's such important data if you're going to run a good meeting. So try it. Love it. Like it. Can't live with it. I hope you found these facilitation tools useful. I have found that having a few quite simple rules like this, which in some ways are kind of playful, just helps set the right tone for such meetings. Also, it's really important that you establish these guidelines up front. We typically will put a page up saying, hey, are you okay for us to facilitate to these 5 or 6 different guidelines? And then I will literally go around the room, almost like the flight attendant on the exit row of an airplane, and say, give me a verbal yes or no if you're okay. I'm trying to get the dialogue going and people saying yes. When that happens, I find most of the time there's a self-policing that goes on. Either individuals self-police themselves, staying in the guidelines they've agreed to, and others will police the others in the room. So your role as facilitator is much more easy once you get this buy-in. Thank you.